Okay, so Harry, look, the shape of that Georgia trial against Donald and the 18 co-defendants, kicked off today. Not to mention it kicked off televised, right? Yeah. I believe that many of these co-defendants will begin to start to point fingers at one another and ultimately point the finger, especially the middle finger, at Trump himself. What's your thoughts? And who do you think out of the 18 will be the first?
Yeah, I agree with you totally. That's what happens in a trial, and all these people who've been blithely pro-Trump, the rubber's hitting the road now. They're looking at financial ruin and incarceration in a Georgia state prison. Let's see who might break first. You look at people who are going to have expensive trials whom Trump won't pay for. So think about Jenna Ellis, who's been pretty vocal, saying, he's not paying for me. Even a guy like Giuliani, who's now really looking harsh at it. It's their own personal calculations. If Meadows loses the removal motion, as I think he would, he's a guy who, does not want to be going to Georgia State Prison. So I see, you sort of serve up the people who feel like they just were trying to give advice. They weren't, total Trumpies. Like Chesbro seems to think that's him now. And you combine those with people who don't have the resources for what's it going to be. You would know even better because you've been through it, $500,000 or more to defend. Those, I think, are your first most likely. So let me start with Jenna Ellis, and maybe Giuliani and Meadows as well. Oh, and also, of course, the smaller fry, the Georgia state electors, who are saying already, yeah, we did it because not just the Trump team, but the president of the United States, Donald Trump, told us to do it. They want a future in Georgia politics. It's not going to be a future with Donald Trump. They're very strong candidates to turn state's evidence and testify against him in particular.
So let me be very clear about something. It doesn't make a difference how much money that you have. You never have more money than the United States government. You're never going to have more money than the district attorney's office, even in a place like Fulton County, Georgia. You're just not. They have unlimited resources. They have time on their side, right? Despite all of this nonsense that, hey, we have to push it. It's clearly not true because DA Fani Willis really took her time in order to draft the indictment. Now, one of the interesting things...
It's not true, but it is true, because here's the one thing that's real so far. Chesbro, Powell, and now maybe Eastman say they want a speedy trial. The law in Georgia's clear. The jury's impaneled by November 3rd, or they're acquitted. That's pretty true. Now, there's all kinds of questions. Who's lumped with them, what happens to removal, but that part of it, and I think the hearing brought that home today, that part is true. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, that part is definitely true. But so yes. Look, the Fulton County DA's office, right, said that it planned for a 4-month-long trial with more than 150 witnesses. Right. That's staggering number, 150 witnesses. While the defense attorneys, right, for, Chesbro or Cheesebro, however the fuck you pronounce his name.
Chesbro, by the way, I'm here to tell you.
Chesbro.
It is Chesbro. Be on team accurate pronunciation here, Michael. Chesbro. Okay,
Chesbro and Sidney Powell, right, that they want, as you just said, to sever their cases from the rest. By the way, as does Trump, right? So now we're talking about real scheduling issues that are going to take place, because I just can't imagine that they're going to, it's going to be like one after the other. Look, you have the judge that is presiding over it, this Judge McAfee, right? And he denied the motion for both Powell and also for Chesbro, for their requests to sever their cases from each other. I found it interesting, and obviously they're going to appeal that decision. I would suspect that they will, which again, is just
after conviction. But go ahead.
Yeah, after conviction. But I suspect that they will. Nevertheless, I believe that Fani Willis legitimately wants to try all 19 at the same exact time, which is amazing because you're talking about defendants from as high a public office as the President of the United States of America to his attorneys, all the way down to election workers. I mean, talk about the gambit, right?
Yeah. But, prosecutors always want to try people together. The dynamic's great for them. They point the finger at one another. Defendants want to be alone. McAfee, I thought, was who all in all impressed me at this hearing. I know he's a kid, Federalist Society, et cetera, but I thought he handled it well and was really on top of stuff. Anyway, he's basically saying, I'm not going to do that, even though he just, as you said, rejected Powell and Chesebro's motion to separate one from the other, and he went through sort of the standard factors. He then said, but I have a little more discretion than that. And he basically sees one trial of 19 people starting no less in November as being bedlam, and he won't do it. But a really important headline, right? The second headline today, anyone who had thought about it could have seen it coming based on her previous RICO trial, which was 8 months, after people had pleaded out already, 3 months for jury selection, 4 months for their case. Even if that holds, let's say a month for jury selection, a month for the defense case, we're talking about 6 months, and that's simply for, Chesebro and Powell, because they're insisting we got to prove everything for every defendant, even though that'll mean big chunks of their case kind of have nothing to do with the two who are there. But think about it. It starts in November, that ends, say, in May. It just got way less likely that the Fulton County case against Trump and whomever else will proceed before November, because we're now taking account of something people hadn't quite realized before. This is going to be a really big, long case, even if it's for one of them.
Yeah, which is funny because the prosecutors said the exact opposite, right? They said that the case would be,
okay,
they did.
Oh, good, we got it going on. All right, what did they say?
Yeah, so the prosecutors said that the case would be the same whether it's against one defendant or all 19 at the same time.
That's what I'm saying.
So that way there was no reason to, sever the defendants into separate trials and so on, which I thought was a very interesting, it was an interesting take by the prosecutors.
Because it's a RICO case, so all the evidence is the same as to everyone. But I think we are saying the same thing. McAfee is saying we won't do this in one trial. We'll do the first one quickly. But since we know, but I agree, the prosecution's saying we got to prove it all versus everyone. And since there's going to be at least two trials, and the first one is going to take 6 months or more. That's what I mean by the odds of Trump going to trial have plummeted. But we're saying the same thing, which is the prosecution thinks it has to prove everything for every case. It's going to be, by the way, stop for a second, right? Chesebro made a big point. I'm there for a memo, for one thing. Powell made a similar point. I'm there for a day and a half, but they're going to put on all kinds of evidence involving everyone for each and every one of those cases, because that's how they've charged it. The defendants don't like it, but what they really don't like is RICO and the way it puts everything under an umbrella. It's not about severance, even though they tried to make it that way today.
Yeah, that they did.
Yeah.
So look, let's talk for a quick moment about this enormous, complicated task of scheduling all of Trump's trials. Let's not even, add in the other 18 co-defendants or any of the other cases, just Trump's calendar, right? In terms of trials and hearings and depositions and so on. In your mind, is it possible for all of these trials to be held prior to Election Day? Because, look, the RICO case alone, I figure, could probably stretch to 8 months. If you would, discuss this with me and my listeners.
Sure. Well, the short answer is no. I mean, you could maybe do a calendar where one case finished, the next began the next day, but there won't be that kind of give, especially with pretrial stuff. And remember, it's not just the criminal cases. Just today, Judge Kaplan said the second case with E. Jean Carroll, where Trump's going to be liable. He said that's going January. I don't care what people say. There's the AG, the case that Michael built, the Letitia James AG case. That's another civil case, but another big
October 2nd, it starts.
It's in theory. So the short answer is no way they all.
Oh, no. That October 2nd date,
No.
according to the judge in that case.
The short answer to your question is no way all the cases go before November. And I think after today, it's looking more likely that Fulton County will not go before then. To me, however, the ball to keep your eye on it still remains the DC case against Trump alone before Judge Chutkin, now scheduled for March. If it goes in March or April or May, maybe even in June, then we do get a really important verdict for voters to take account of as to whether the candidate of a major party is in fact not just a felon, but a felon who tried to overthrow the Constitution. Anyway, that's the trial that I think is really important to happen before, and I think that it will. But otherwise, before November, forget about it. And it also shows, I mean, we found this out yesterday when learning more about what Jack Smith is investigating. This is a honking huge investigation, not just involving Trump. It's going to go for years, literally, with the people who aren't Trump. But the real exigency for speed is an important case before November. And that, I think, should be most importantly the DC case out of January 6th.
Okay, so just again, playing with the calendar, just the very first few cases. So now you have, in under a month, on October 2nd is the start of the New York Attorney General civil case against Trump.
So he doesn't have to be there in person because it's civil, but
right, he doesn't.
He's got to defend.
I mean, right. I mean, it's a minimum $250 million. I still speculate that it'll be closer to the $700 million number. All right. Yeah. One would expect that you would want to be there. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But then October 3rd, he's now court ordered to appear in the case that he brought against me for the $500 million in that civil lawsuit, Southern District of Miami. He has to, and the judge said, I don't care what's going on. He has to sit for that deposition. So that's now October. They believe that the New York Attorney General case will be at least 8 weeks, right? So that brings you to mid-December, give or take. Now, January, you have the E. Jean Carroll case that's starting. So at least the guy's off for Christmas. I mean, right? And so on, assuming that the trial stops after 8 weeks. Now he starts E. Jean Carroll. By the time that case, that'll be a quick one because it's going to be very similar to the last one. We now know
it's damages only, but it'll be damages also.
Only.
There could be a lot of skirmishes about we're trying to get at his finances and stuff. I don't know if it'll be that quick, but you're right. It's nothing about liability anymore.
Then you have the March case, which is the Manhattan DA's case, and I'll tell you, Trump and his counsel, they filed. Just here in New York alone, 2 motions within which to extend the period of time before which these cases are supposed to start. And the judge, Judge Engoron, for example, in 6 very strong words, turned around and said that defendants' claims, are absolutely, I forget how he described it, but it was like defendants' claims lack merit. And so on, and basically shut that down, trying to put off the October case for obviously the Manhattan Attorney General, Attorney General case. Yeah. So he's losing on all of these motions within which to extend it out. Now that's a good thing because I've tried to explain to so many people, and I don't know why it's just not sinking in. This is all part of the Trump playbook. Delay, delay, delay. In his mind, He believes all of these polls that he and Biden right now are running neck and neck, dead even, if in fact the general election took place tomorrow. So his only out is what? Right? Is that he wins the election and he makes all of this stuff go away.
Most of this.
Including the state cases in his mind. He believes as president of the United States that they will not be able to pursue it to at least the Barr memo, that he will not be able to be prosecuted while he is sitting as the president. He also intends at that point in time to be president for life. Because as we all know, and it's not my words, it's not the great Harry Litman words, it's the words from the unhinged Donald J. Trump, that he intends to rewrite the Constitution. So he intends to be or to remain president forever, meaning that he will not be held accountable for any of this. I mean, that's a hell of a game plan.
Right, exactly. It's funny. It seems like he just like fastens onto something and then just goes about it. And it's clear that there's no legal out. It would have to be a political out. But you're really right about, there are various judges. Kaplan's a very good example. Your deposition's a very good example. Yeah, they know about these criminal cases, but hey, their case is pretty important. And as Judge Chutkan said in the last hearing, he's running for president. A lot of people have other responsibilities. He's just going to have to adjust his schedule to get here. So it all is coming at him like a freight train. And I do think at least the success he's had in the past as an escape artist is already he doesn't have hope for that level of success. But you're right. It's a funny thing, and I know you don't, and as don't I. Mainly look at the politics of it, but you think of all that's happening, how each charge seems really to be both solid and diminishing of him as a person, and yet here we are in polls, as a toss-up. There are things to say about that, but one thing, you can't discount, and what a national nightmare it would be. He's already told us, as you say, what would ensue, if he actually wins the thing. So I try hard as the lawyer to just sort of focus on what happens in otherwise. And I want to say that I think his Harry Houdini days are behind him. He is really looking at a world of hurt, not to mention, criminal convictions from just, sort of coming at him from incoming from many different directions.
It's funny, though, because while all of this is going on, you brought up an incredibly important point, which is the financial drain of your resources when you're a defendant. I don't have to tell you because this is what you did for so many years. Yeah. The financial drain on the defendant is enormous. The financial drain on the institution is practically nil. You're already getting paid for that job, right? And whether it's 2 people, 5 people, and so on, then the resources that they can employ against you, there is no boundary.
You sit there as they're trying the case, and every day, even it's got nothing to do with you, that's another 5 figures anyway.
Yeah.
Jenna Ellis's little kitty will not last long.
By the way, none of theirs will.
Yeah.
And we turned around and I had asked you, who do you think is going to provide, testimony, who will flip, so to speak? Yeah. And I really hate that word because it's really not flipping, it's cooperating.
Yeah.
So who will be the first one to jump out, cooperate? Listen, Rudy Colludi, drunken Giuliani, as my grandma used to always say, is of gechachte tsuris. He's got some real fucking problems on his hand. Not only is he financially in trouble right now, all right, he's also looking at spending God knows how many years behind bars. For example, we just saw the way
bars, which as a federal guy he knows really is bad. Yeah.
He sure does. And we just saw, for example, the way the courts threw the book at, this guy from the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, Enrique Tarrio, 22 years. They're not playing games here. Yeah. All right. And the last thing that Colludi wants to do is spend the rest of his life behind bars. Not to mention, financially, he's strapped, and he's been reaching out to Donald. And Donald hasn't offered up a penny, not to any of them. So the question then becomes, what do you do when you have no financial resources? All right? You have no financial resources, or you take some of these guys like Eastman or Sidney Powell. They have families too.
Yeah.
Maybe their families are relying upon them for financial support. Maybe they're the bread earners of their family. What do you do when that shit gets cut off and your lawyer's like, listen, you're going to need to put another $1 million into my OLA account. Otherwise, I can't continue to represent you. And you're like, it's either that or you pay the mortgage, right? Or your kids
and here
end
it's
up
worse. So first of all, you're so right. It's really harsh. I've seen it and felt it even as a prosecutor on the other side. It's ruinous. And that, you understand why people do it, feel they have to do it. There is an option. And we're seeing Severance did it in Mar-a-Lago, right? He got a federal public defender who are much better than people know. But you're totally right. You don't, any high-profile defendant doesn't want to do that. And the thing is here, they're going to have to pony up millions and millions of dollars. And
by the way, you're not automatically.
Let me just finish the sentence. And then they're going to lose. It'd be one thing if they had something really good to try for, but their cases are pretty hopeless also. So talk about a lose situation. And I do think you're right, by the way, when you mentioned with Rudy. This is what I see is going on with Meadows also. When they first think about it, it's like, it is a nightmare. Just keep me out of jail. What do I have to do? But the answer for most is, you've passed that point. You're going to go to jail, and it really does matter how long, under what terms, and that's where cooperation does come in, because they're looking at financial ruin kind of for nothing. Financial ruin followed by conviction. Man, oh man, is that a tough spot. Especially
when the prosecutors start holding up documents, emails, text messages, all of the information that they've accumulated over the 2+ years, and they say, why don't you just turn around and tell me why you think it's not a smart idea for you to cooperate? Yeah. Because you're dead in the water, whether you go left or right. So
people understand what they're going to do in their offices. They're going to come in and the prosecutor, look, we got your client dead to rights. Let me show you a few things. And, so this isn't on the stand because you've been there. It's people saying, look at this sign right here. They got all the leverage, and that is the big arm of the state. On the other hand, they have it because the people on the other side committed some really serious, heinous, anti-democratic crimes. So it's that tempers your sense of their poignant position.
Yeah, but remember something though. But Harry, in my specific case, I never met with prosecutors. They never showed me, hey, this is what we have. If you don't, what they did instead is they gave me 48 hours, not 2+ years like these guys had. Yeah. I had 48 hours, or their threat was to indict my wife as a co-conspirator to the hush money payment, which they knew was my Achilles heel. I would never allow that to happen. It's very, very different. But it was just announced. I'm just talking
about the meeting you're describing for your listeners.
Yes.
That'll be in an office. Come on back, Ms. Ellis's attorney. Let me show you what we've got. Your call. But let me tell you, whoever comes in first gets the better deal. And, the window's closing. It's a very sobering. They're in the vice grip of the law now. All this sort of posturing and politics, forget about it.
It's all nothing.
Now they are. It is fucking real. And that is going to induce some cooperation.
And so, look, talk about cooperators.
Yeah.
It was announced that the Mar-a-Lago IT worker, Yacil Taveras, that he flipped, or he's cooperating against Trump, and that he's actually even worked out a cooperation agreement. I guess it's the 5K1 cooperation agreement. Do you believe that Nauta or De Oliveira will do the same?
Well, I'll start here. Man, should they ever. They're in the exact same position. They lied in front of the grand jury as Taveras did. They got no hope, and they've been charged with not the lies just, but the obstruction. So they are really looking at a serious hit, and for what? You're already going to have Tavares telling the truth. The jury's going to believe Tavares. And, that it's not just that it's plausible knowing Trump, but there's a lot of circumstances. There's video, there's everything. It is friggin' crazy that the finger, you feel suspicious about Stanley Woodward's role representing, people who are their interests are opposed. Maybe Nauta is somehow thinking that, if I do some time for Donald Trump, he'll take care of me for the rest of my life. Maybe.
Good luck.
But other than that, in terms of the case in front of them, it is frigging nuts that they are not cooperating. Now that Tavares has, it's double frigging nuts. Is that a fair legal phrase? Double frigging nuts. I'm sticking by it. So, man, should they ever. And we got a prisoner's dilemma game theory here going, if I can get kind of pointy-headed, because now they're looking at each other. They can't talk to each other now, but Nauta fears De Oliveira. De Oliveira fears Nauta. That's the kind of dynamic that makes them both want to show up, especially because whoever does it first gets a better deal. There's going to be a hearing, a so-called Garcia hearing, to decide should Woodward be anywhere near them. And if they get independent counsel, any independent counsel worth his or her salt will say, run, don't walk to the special counsel's office, offer to plead, and if nothing else, you get this obstruction off your back, which is, years as opposed to just a false statement. Man, should they ever do that? And that's eluding your question a little. Your question was, will they? My best guess is yes, just because it's so rational, but things are sometimes irrational in Trump world.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny because I was on Abby Phillip, and then they played it.
He's great. Yeah.
Another one. She's great. I was on with Abby, and I said the same thing, that what will ultimately happen is that they will start to cooperate, and they will use the cooperation, and so on. And it was funny because Jennifer Rogers, as well as Ellie Honan, both said, no, it's not even necessary. They don't need them, and so on. Basically, almost like refuting what you and I are just saying right now. I completely disagree.
But they'll take them. So I see that. I can see that point. It's too late now that we have Tavares. But, they actually, Jennifer Rogers knows her stuff. She's a good friend. She's an excellent prosecutor. But somebody comes to them in a Trump case and says, take me off from the defense table to the prosecution table, and I'll tell you everything that happened. And our case goes from pretty secure to belt and suspenders.
We were actually talking about, we were actually talking about the 18 co-defendants.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
In that case,
hard to keep it all track.
Well, that's the whole. That's the whole thing. But all of these cases are like mirror images of each other. There's all of these additional co-defendants in this specific case, right? In the superseding indictment, employee number 4 is the Yuscil Tavares, right? Yeah. What's the difference between Yuscil Tavares or Sidney Powell or Rudy Giuliani or any of the others? There really is none. And the truth is that it's the first guy to the gate that's going to get the best deal. And after a while, you're right, they don't need the last guys coming in. All they're doing is corroborating what everybody else has already provided. And once they have their case, they're not going to let people out of the case simply so that they can get the one guy.
Away. No, you know this. You agree to cooperate. You're in the grand jury. You spill your guts. You're not going to be able to get.
I did not agree to cooperate. By the way,
I
never signed a 5K1.
You know this is a fact. So there's no getting out. There's no turning back once you do it. And that's true. But it's a whole different situation. And again, these guys got charged with obstruction and justified under the law and the facts, but really they were kind of flunkies here moving around boxes. So I don't know if they get a clean slate, but they get something. I just want to say there are parallels, but here's the big contrast: Fulton County and others with the DC case where he's out there all alone and there isn't this maneuvering, and that's on purpose. Smith was really wanting to really isolate, zero in on Trump, and no severance, no whatever. That's what's well, he could try to claim immunity, but he'll lose. So that's the real contrast, one in which Trump is out there and lonely. And if he loses, there's nothing to say. Well, I should never say with Donald Trump, there's nothing to say about it.
Right.
But within the contours of the law, he's just it's just coming at him like a freight train.
I mean, look, let me just use Severance as an example here. So now the guy is the first one to jump ship, right? He agrees to testify in the classified documents case. And what does he get in exchange? He gets an acknowledgement that he will not be prosecuted.
Yeah, he's going to walk. I think he's going to walk, even though he lied to the grand jury. Yeah,
that's right. They're gonna let that go, and he will not be charged with any crimes.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going to suffer financial ruin. He's not going to sleep at night thinking, how long is he going to get? And taking a look at some of the other folks, like the insurrectionists, 22 years, 17 years, 18 years for Stuart Rhodes. I mean, you're talking about almost 2 decades. And
now he wouldn't get that, but I mean, 3 years. It's pretty sobering.
Well, trust me, it is.
Yeah.
I know that 36 months is a bitch. Even though I did 13, and so on, and where I did the 13 months is a whole lot nicer where these guys are going to end up.
Well, although remember, the federal court is going to be is that's where Severance is. It's federal charges. But if we're back into Fulton County, that's an honest factor. These places, it shouldn't be the case. But if they're above constitutional minimum, then it's part of the deal. They are hellholes. State prisons can be real hellholes. So,
Yeah. By the way, federal too is it's no cakewalk. Even if you're in a minimum security facility, like I was at Otisville, being away from your family, the financial devastation,
the food,
the sadness,
the toilets,
food sucks.
If you're a Donald Trump,
Yeah, believe me, there's no Miss Claire on number 6 hair dye there either. All right. I'll tell you that. So look, it seems, at least it does to me, that everyone is going to be flipping on Trump. Right. And I've said this before. I said on television, it got a lot of laughs, but I meant it, that there's going to be more flipping than at the U.S. gymnastics, event. First of all, you have to start with Meadows and run it straight down the line to Tavares, all of whom are going to say the same thing, right? The defense was, I was following Trump's orders. Is it any different than like what I had said? What I did for Trump, and the only thing I actually did, other than, of course, the misrepresentation to Congress, which, again, I did, like Stormy Daniels, at the direction of, in concert with, and for the benefit of Donald J. Trump. Same thing that they're going to say. I was following Trump's orders.
That's right. Look, in terms of the legal setting...
Harry, here comes the question.
Yeah.
How will this play with a jury? And what does it bode for Trump?
Trump cannot win. He cannot hope for an acquittal. His the evidence is too strong against him. Not to mention that normal, like axiom number 1, which I want to trademark. He won't testify. He's toast with one. There's only one legal little hope for him, and that's a hung jury because somebody is on the jury who is a MAGA-ite and otherwise just won't follow his or her charge. That's his only hope, and even then, the U.S. will retry the case. So how will it play for Trump? Trump is gonna be convicted, even if he's able to get a hung jury in the first case. He has no irrational, mathematical hope for an acquittal. So it all comes down, really, it's as you said, it's his political strategy, and on the legal side, just can he get some kind of jury nullification? One guy we had that once in a Manafort jury in the person actually followed the charge, said, I love Manafort, I love Trump, but the guy's guilty. The evidence is very strong against Trump. And as you say, we got many different cases. He's toast as a legal matter. That's how it'll play in front of a jury. And that's, it is true, even to Jennifer Rogers' point, with more cooperators, fewer cooperators, the guy has zero chance of an acquittal.
I totally agree with you. There's only one problem. You're speaking as the great Harry Litman, prosecutor, knowledgeable lawyer.
Yeah.
Here's the problem when it comes to Donald. If, in fact, there is an acquittal based upon a hung jury, I shouldn't say acquittal.
No, that's not an acquittal.
It's not an acquittal.
Go ahead.
It's not an acquittal. So there's a hung jury. Yeah. Donald will declare it as an acquittal. Full exoneration. It's a full exoneration. I won. They're just gonna
no
keep,
collusion. Whatever.
They're just gonna keep doing this to me again and again and again because they're putting me between you and I'm protecting you, and on and on and on. Right?
But they will. Assuming he doesn't win the presidency, they will do that. They'll retry him. And then it doesn't matter. He can squawk all he wants because he doesn't have an ability to leverage the enmity or the antagonism of his fans in a way that helps save his skin. They've crossed it now, the Rubicon now. They're charging him. If he gets a hung jury, they'll retry him. Except for the political, and it's not a small except for, we are at some crossroads as a country. But that aside, he's got no real, his only prospect is some kind of, clemency or something at the end of the day where some political official decides, we don't have to see him in jail. But getting away from the charges, ixnay, will not happen, even if he gets, one or two, they'll keep trying him.
You know what's amazing too is talking about money as it relates to Rudy and to Meadows and Chesebro and all the 18,
Chesebro,
right? Chesebro, the co-defendants and so on. What happens hypothetically if all of these maggot morons stop feeding the beast and stop sending in money every single time Trump sends out a text message, which is about 30 times a day, asking for more and more money? If they stop and they cut off that spigot, I don't even know where his money will come from, because he's got 12.5 lawyers all over. He's got legal issues all over the place. It's like what, 6 different matters going on at the same time? What happens if they cut off that spigot? Then all of a sudden he's in the same position, and you can say, "Oh, it's not true. It's not true." The guy's cash poor. It reminds me of, there was a great Family Guy episode where Peter Griffin gets into a fight with Donald. It's like the Peter Griffin versus the chicken fight that goes on in every single episode. But this is one instead of the chicken. It's Donald, and he just goes straight up to Donald's face and he goes, "You are cash poor."
Oh!
And so in here, and then Donald turns and says, "Say that to me again. I dare you." And then he goes, "You, Trump, are cash poor." As they end up in this massive battle with Melania throwing to Peter a 9-iron, telling him to kill him. It's really very, very funny, but it's true. He does not have ruinous. The cash
does
flow.
If his quixotic effort to capture the presidency is done, does even he think, well, this is the best deal I can now make is, to resolve these 98 cases against me. He won't be able to do them all, civil, criminal, etc. But, and then, what's the minimum I'll have to do? Step away for all time? Well, that's been shown anyway. It's long since been clear something like that makes sense. But he's in his, Trumpian way, wanting to go for broke, I guess. And but you're right. Of course, that's a big if, right? Somehow that is the one thing he's always been able to do, is milk things on the political side. But now what he's looking at is a state of the world where it doesn't matter. If he does all that and gets more and more, and he's sentenced to 20 years in Georgia State Penitentiary, or 5 years, whatever, good luck with all the donations. But it's all part and parcel of, trying to win as his improbable escape hatch. And that's, gotta say, kind of up to the American people, right? I mean, man, oh man, oh man, if he actually were to command a majority, then what would it say about us as a country? Where would you want to move to? So
what does all of this say about us right now?
Well, that's
country,
right. I mean, you can blame
we
him
are
a
the
lot,
laughing stock.
He's blameworthy, but man, how is he? This is again not my part of expertise, but you kidding me? For tie in the polls? What the hell? He's playing it as an open hand, saying what he's going to do if he's elected, basically take a wrecking ball to the Constitution. What the hell? You have to hope. I've heard some pretty rational explanations for why he's much farther behind, much more remote than the just sort of heads up polling would suggest. But that he's in the ballpark universe is like totally mind-blowing.
It's head scratching, yeah. So let me ask you this, Harry.
Yeah.
How likely is it that Chesebro, Powell, Meadows, and even Trump get separate trials in Georgia?
Unlikely. Well, I think Chesebro, after today, Powell, and I think Eastman, anyone who plays that speedy trial card, and I'm persuaded that Chesebro played it because he didn't want a speedy trial, he wanted a solo trial, and he is totally bent out of shape. That, oh my God, here into my little lifeboat. Now here comes Sidney Powell, and now John Eastman is climbing down the rope ladder to us. But they're not. The judge is not going to separate those guys out. But he is going to say speedy trial happening so quick that'll be separate from everyone else. So the big question will be, what about the other? Let's say it's 16. First of all, you got to imagine a good number of them, 3, 5, 8, 10, will plead out. And so it really is this, including, I have to think, one or more of these, inner circle, what
agreed.
Pence memorably called a gaggle of crackpot lawyers. So my best guess is that McAfee will try to hold it to 2 cases, maybe 3. Why I say maybe 3 is if Meadows by chance gets removal, which he shouldn't, he could possibly be over there on his own. But basically, with that sort of an asterisk to the side there, I think 2 trials, both really long, very convoluted, and I don't think the Trump trial soon enough, but it's the speedy trial types, maybe 3 of them, and then the remaining 7 or 8 or 9. Not what Trump wants, because they're all going to point the finger at him during the trial. But I don't think McAfee seemed of a mind to subdivide it any more than that. That's my best guess. We'll know better in a few weeks, because he's given the state one more shot at sending briefs that say, let's keep them all lumped together. I think when he rules, he'll do it in such a way that makes clear, I'm making this divide, the speedy trial severance, other people divide, but I'm not inclined to, slice and dice more finely than that.
So let me go back then to the crazy calendar that is called the Trump calendar of trials. The speedy trial happening in Georgia is due to take place October 23rd. Well,
jury selection begins.
Yes, jury selection begins. Problem with that is, as I was saying, the civil case here in Manhattan with our unsinkable Attorney General Tish James begins October 2nd. They're expecting an 8-week trial, I think, is how long that the court has, basically held up the docket or the calendar, the judge's calendar for it, which brings you far past the 23rd. I mean, that's basically 3 weeks. There's another 5 weeks potentially after that, based upon all of the defendants, based upon, all of the witnesses to which I'm subpoenaed to testify in that matter as well. And I know that I'm not going at the very beginning, which means that there's going to be plenty of witnesses that the prosecutors are putting on, not to mention the number of witnesses that the defendant will then call, as well as the cross-examination. Could you imagine? I believe that cross-examination by Trump's counsel, just of me alone, is going to be a full day. Yeah. They're going to try to keep me there at least the full 8 hours that is permitted. What do you see happening here? Do you see this October 23rd?
I see things giving ground massively. I see his being able to delay. All this stuff is loosey-goosey, except the speedy trial under Georgia, because if November 3rd, the jury isn't impaneled, they're acquitted. That's the thing that can't happen unless they themselves give up on their speedy trial demand. So it doesn't matter. And the Fani Willis is she's so sort of big time prosecutor going in and saying, we're ready. She's got to say that. That's the one thing that is set in stone, or at least is in the control of the defendants. If they don't budge, it doesn't matter what else is going on. That trial will begin by November 3rd. I mean, it's even going to get crazy if they haven't picked a jury and it starts to be like, Halloween, right? They'll stay 24 hours a day. So everything else, I think, will give ground. Judges will talk to each other. There'll be, a little bit of kind of play in the joints. Who will go first? Who will persuade whom? Looks like Alvin Bragg, who, as you say, is supposed to go early, might be amenable or gracious about letting it go. But unless they stop in Georgia their demands, it's going to be November 3rd. So that trial, and you're right, 4 months, maybe 5 months, maybe 6 months, that's happening. So everything gets kind of built around that. And it's a criminal trial. He's got to be there for it. We're talking, Super Tuesday. We're talking about the convention. It's a bloody mess. But that is the one anchor point that, they're not going to let him be acquitted. And that's the choice under Georgia Speedy Trial Act. It's a little bit crazy, but you can't just do these normal continuances as you would in other cases, given the drop dead factor of they get to walk if the jury hasn't been impaneled on the 3rd.
Yep. So today I was over at my favorite place, the Regency, and I was having a cup of coffee. I had my daughter and my niece with me, and this lady just comes over to ask me a question.
Right.
And I thought it was such a good
the real
question.
Deal, Michael. Tell us the truth. Right. Exactly.
So she comes over and she asks me a question. I'm saying to myself, my God, what a great question. I have to ask the great Harry Litman his opinion on this.
Okay.
And here's what she asked me.
On. Yeah.
Here's what she asked me.
All right.
Of the 18 co-defendants to Trump, who has the most to fear legally? And who could do the most damage to Trump if they decide to cooperate?
Okay, so I have an opinion here. The most to lose legally, Giuliani. The second most, Meadows. The most damage to Trump is the reverse. First, Meadows, and then probably Giuliani. Although, first Meadows for sure. Giuliani, who does, I'm sticking with most to lose, is such a terribly non-credible witness that maybe, even though he knows a lot, he knows where the bodies are buried, as it were. He buried a lot of them himself. He'll, by the time people are done with him on cross, he would be completely non-credible. But Meadows could definitely kill him. There are other witnesses who aren't even charged, like, and probably will, Cipollone and Philbin. But so I'll say Julian can lose the most, Meadows second. Meadows could hurt him the most, and second to Meadows as to who can hurt him. If it's not Giuliani, because he's not credible, it's just another of the highly placed lawyers, like maybe Eastman, because he was present the whole time. Cassidy Hutchinson and others are sort of stand-in. They'll say, they know that some of the terrible things happen, but they're not defendants. So Meadows, first and foremost, can really hurt him the worst.
Yeah. There's just, again, there's so many, and we don't really, and my response to her was, we don't know the evidence yet that will be coming out at trial. For all you know, it could be somebody else. It could be that they have some information which is just totally destructive and shows that Trump never believed any of this, and this entire thing was nothing more than a attempt to hold on to power at any and all cost.
Yeah, let me stick with Cipollone for a second. We heard him dodge any question having to do with executive privilege, but that got held against him. To the grand jury, he gave all that up. Cassidy Hutchinson, others. So the other witnesses are going to be pretty strong here, and we haven't seen everything. I think that was strategic. There's a few things that are really big that we know he didn't put into the indictment. He's waiting to unveil. By the way, that's also part of the dynamic with severance. So another reason defendants generally want to draw. They want the preview. They want they want to be sitting there taking a lot of notes during the Chesbro trial, because it's, that they'll have seen the evidence, see how it plays, and the like. Because I think it's absolutely right, your surmise that Smith's got mountains of evidence that we haven't seen. And one more point, axiom number one: How's Trump, who can pontificate all he wants on the campaign trail, how's Trump going to try to make his case? Not by testifying. He just can't do it. So if you really think about it, it gets a little nerdy, but through the prism of the rules of evidence, the points that he wants to make, it's not even clear he can. So he's going to get clobbered.
I agree with you. So look, in response to reporting that Trump was warned months ahead of time that he would face a raid by the FBI by lawyer Evan Corcoran, the lawyer himself was warned not to bring it up again, because if you push Trump with subpoenas, he'll go ballistic. Right. And by the way, I've seen this 1,000 times. There are certain things when he doesn't want to hear something, no matter how good the advice is, no matter how smart it is to ensure that he doesn't do X, Y, and Z, you cannot bring it up to him for fear that you're going to be gonzo tomorrow. Yeah, he'll bite your head off. So that's what Meadows was saying, right? Yeah. And so even the talk, did you hear? I mean, that's part of what Corcoran had to say. He went down, okay, I'm flying down here, Mr. President. We've gotten the subpoena. Let me, and he couldn't even get Trump to focus. Trump is just like, just dishing on Hillary Clinton and how he's being mistreated. The guy's a child in so many ways. He is. I call him that. I call him the man child all the time. But luckily for Corcoran, right, at least that idiot saved the receipts. And, he wrote recurrent theme. He put a memo together, recurrent theme. People who deal with Trump know they better have proof, because he'll break law, then deny and lie. 100%. People like, we heard it from Raffensperger, from Comey, from me. But I'm doing voice memos, right? Yeah, Raffensperger, Michael Cohen, and Comey, really good example, right? He did the voice memos right away, which makes him admissible. He's a lawyer. He knows he's got to protect himself also. Trump, anyone who's dealt with him, I think knows the sad story here. So as you just said, Corcoran makes these contemporaneous, of series of voice memos and so on to memorialize the exchange to protect his ass. Right. So now you have solid evidence. If you would, discuss with me the importance of Corcoran's revelation, as well as the damage that those voice memos, those contemporaneous notes can do for this case. I think it's pretty huge. Remember, we already had the big one big part of it, which is Trump saying, well, what if we don't comply? That's killer evidence already. That comes in, by the way, and how's he going to rebut it if he doesn't testify? But this is his lawyer. I mean, the things that you tape with Raffensperger and Corcoran, it's all the more probative, I think, and influential to a jury, because Trump is there thinking, I'm protected. I've got the attorney-client shield or whatever, or Raffensperger won't be taping me. And that's when Trump really sort of tells the truth. So, he's made it seem like, what a terrible turn of events, that they came after him with a search warrant. Give me a break. We now know the lawyer said to him flat out, it's a subpoena. If you don't comply with it, there's going to be a search warrant, etc. So there's nothing to be surprised about. But that kind of evidence, those exchanges, when
The jury knows that Trump thinks they're not going to be able to hear it, and they do. In my experience as a prosecutor, that stuff is killer. Trump actually
that's
saying
gold.
to his lawyer, what if we just don't comply? You can almost say that and rest your case. You know that it's not about that he thinks he can lawfully do stuff. It's about what he thinks he can get away with, which is a lesson you've been, proclaiming for 4 or 5 years here.
The funniest thing is with Raffensperger, it was a phone call that was made out of the Oval Office, and every phone call is actually recorded. Yeah. And so how he thought that it wasn't going to come out, I don't know. But I did want to ask you something that, popped up, and it really intrigued me. And I'm sure it's going to intrigue my listeners too. There was a watchdog group, and I forget the name of them, that sued to block Trump from the Colorado ballot, citing the 14th... citing the 14th Amendment disqualification clause. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that can actually occur? Are there enough states that can invoke the 14th Amendment disqualification clause, keeping him off the ballot, thereby no chance that the guy could win no matter what?
Don't we live in strange times that an arcane provision like that is sort of on everybody's mind? So here's my take on it. I'll try to keep it short, but it is complicated. I agree with with Tribe and Ludig and those guys that it's self-executing in the sense that you don't need anything more in terms of the table being set, that, he's done it. He's done what somebody could determine really was insurrection, and then it's straightforward on the Constitution. But the big question is, who is that somebody? So, in the past, the Congress has been the one that's implemented it. That can't happen here, and it'd be a flawed scheme if it were, because it's partisan. So they think it'll go to the Supreme Court. I think it'll go to the Supreme Court. I think at least one or more states will actually say, I'm looking at my best evidence, just as I would decide guy's 34, not 35. I'm deciding he's committed insurrection. Then in the traditional American way, they'll sue and it'll be joined. And here's my worry about the U.S. Supreme Court, that they'll, as they did in the gerrymandering case, they'll say something like, this just isn't for us to decide. Even if it's 98% that Trump committed insurrection, that kind of fact finding, which is what's needed, that's either for the political branches or some like other process, but it's not our final call. So I think, even though it'll be all served up, I think their decision, and I think they'll make it, but it'll be inconclusive in that they'll say, we can't make it. Now that's a really troublesome state of affairs. It goes pretty far to saying that this important qualification in the Constitution, and there are only 3 or 4 of them, seems not to be enforceable. It's got to be enforceable, but at least as a practical matter, what I think is on the horizon, which is some states take them off the ballot, a suit ensues and it goes to the U.S. Supreme Court. My best guess is the next step, the Supreme Court saying, yep, that's the right answer, he's off the ballot, won't happen. And so in that sense, it's an important, but ultimately, with all respect to the people who are touting this now, but ultimately it's going to be academic. That's my sad take on a very important question.
What's amazing though to me is going back to so many of these GOP, these MAGA morons, and you try to have an intelligent conversation, which is virtually impossible when you're dealing with somebody with 4 teeth and 3 brain cells. You're trying to have a conversation with them about the things that Trump has done, the 91 counts that are currently against him, the litany of litigation, the plethora of charges, and so on. And all they keep doing is going back to Hunter Biden, Hunter Biden.
Who had a bad day today. I don't know if your listeners know, but
I know. I was going to just bring that up, that Hunter Biden, that the special counsel that was assigned to the Hunter Biden case is actually going to seek an indictment on gun charges before the end of this month. How do you think that ends up affecting Joe Biden? Even though Hunter Biden is not running for the presidency, it's Joe Biden, and how do you think that this is going to end up affecting Joe Biden's campaign? Because all they want to do is look for anything with the Biden last name to turn around and justify the multitude of counts pending against Trump.
Yeah, I think so. Look, any rational person will say, if Hunter Biden, when he was in the depths of drug use, said he didn't use drugs on a gun application many years, that really says nothing about Joe Biden. But then we have the big irrational cohort, which is pretty big, and it will give rise to very bogus, but whataboutism that maybe will stick. I don't think it'll stick on for anyone who isn't already predisposed to Trump, but it might stick on with some people who would otherwise maybe be peeled away. But it'll be like, all politicians are corrupt. Oh, the Bidens lied, Trump lies, etc. And as a way of discounting Trump's far more serious crimes, not to mention, as you suggest, committed by him, not his son. So it shouldn't have any purchase.
Right.
But and I think the people it has some purchase on are already kind of there for them. But the opportunity cost of not peeling them away, I think it matters. I think Republicans think it matters, and that's why even though they cynically realize this got nothing to do with Joe Biden, it's why they want it to happen for that kind of bogus talking point.
I mean, let's just not forget that you have Jared Kushner with $640 million. Jared and Ivanka literally made during the 4 years that they were special advisors to the president. Let's not forget the $2+ billion, closer to $3 billion, with all of the other Gulf Coast countries putting into some new hedge fund that he started. A guy who's completely inept at the area, never been in it before. So, I'm not just trying to be mean. I mean, this is just not his world. It's not his forte.
Fair enough. But once you're in that game, you're kind of lost. Once your third of reply is, well, what about Jared Kushner? That they can just start out and have it not be the focus, which it really has to be, on the most serious crimes by far by a president in our history. That's their game. So that
should be.
Yeah.
Well, Harry, thank you so much, as always for helping to spread knowledge, to spread truth, and to give my listeners the inside track on the Harry Litman knowledge. I truly appreciate you, and I thank you, my brother.
Always a pleasure, man. What a news day! It's like all our news now is coming with like a side helping of criminal process. So, man, oh man, may you live your life in interesting times. Thanks, Michael. Always fun.
Thank you, Harry.
Bye-bye. We didn't get again, not a really good disagreement. I thought for a few seconds, but yeah, it didn't come to pass. Next time,
Harry. I'll see you soon, brother.
All right.